So, hello and welcome back. My name is Jennifer and I make stuff. And in this video I'm going to show you the difference between making something look like antique bronze and making something look like copper patina. There are actually some pictures of antique bronze that has this kind of style or shades that copper patina gets over time, so meaning that kind of greenish blue tint. But I'm going to focus on when it comes to the antique bronze, mainly focusing on that kind of deeper, dull look of bronze and having those kind of darker, deeper golden metallic shades to it. I have, for example, this plant pot here, and this one definitely looks like it's supposed to represent antique bronze, and as you can see it definitely has those deeper tones, but in especially the highlights it reflects this kind of golden tint to it. It's not like brass, but it has more of a warmer toned, very dark gold shade to it. I think we're all pretty familiar with what copper patina looks like. It is that reddish toned metal that over time, when it's getting old and antique, it's get more and more of that kind of greenish blue surface on top of it. What I have here are some of the objects that I want to give this makeover, because they're not the style that I want to have here, but they are perfect interior decorations to have for the style that I'm going for in my apartment. Thankfully, I have two of each object here. So what I have here, for example, I have these two. There are ceramic angels that I actually painted a few years ago just by adding some gold to the highlights of them, but this is definitely not the style that I'm going for. But these are going to be perfect to create that kind of antique bronze effect, and the other one can have that copper patina. I also found a picture, I think it was obviously on Pinterest, there was actually an angel that had that kind of copper patina finish to it, so I thought that I want to definitely try that effect on one of these angels. And then I have some of these candle holders. So I have these ones that are like silver chrome. So these are going to be a little bit fun to create some textures too, since they have a smooth surface. And the other pair that I have here that are also candle holders are these that have this kind of smoky glass look to them. Even though they are smooth glass or glossy glass, they still have some nice decorative details to them. So I want to make sure that these beaded looks gets more enhanced and stands out a lot more. So that's going to be working great with both the antique bronze and the copper patina. So that's what I have in mind here. It's just going to be a little bit of a fun experiment here. I do not have a paint, however, there is a copper finish. I have, the golden wax, and then I have some of these pan pastels that have more of those reddish tones. But I do have this nail art powder that is in I think it's rose gold, and I don't know if it's going to work, but if I try to mix this one in with a little bit of that golden wax, maybe that's going to help to create more of a copper wax. So I can paint that on top of the surface of these objects that I want to have this copper patina effect to. So I'm going to play around and see what I think looks best, and this video is going to be a helpful guide when I'm going to work on those other videos for you to just go and check this video so you know what I'm doing the other ones that are going to come after this one. So let's start creating something that looks like antique bronze and some copper patina here. So the first object I'm going to start with this experiment is one of the angels, and I'm going to give this one a bronze effect. And the first thing I'm going to do is add a layer of black chalk paint that's diluted a little bit with water so you can see some of the original paint on the angel peek through underneath to give some interesting variations of tones and textures to the angel. And then I did some stippling using the graphite chalk paint just to add one more layer of some interesting textures and details. After looking at some of the reference pictures of some antique bronze, I could see that there are some spots of this kind of warmish toned reddish brown tint to some areas, so I want to add that as one of the next steps of this layering process. And this one I'm going to apply like I did with the graphite chalk paint in a stippling motion using an old damaged bristle brush to get some interesting variations of patterns. And after looking at the reference pictures once more, I could see that there were some of these baby blue looking patina on some of these bronze metals. So I'm going to do a mixture here with some white chalk paint and some of these light blue pastels that I have to create a similar shade of patina to this angel. And this one is applied in sort of a dry brush stippling motion and adding it in a random spots and focusing on some of the highlights, but also trying to get it in some of the deeper crevices just to get more of that look of some kind of patina that has a random placement all over the surface of the angel. Then to get a base coat before I'm going to add the bronze effect, I'm going to go over with a rusty paint mix that I have here with some burnt umber mixed in with some of the rusty tones of soft pastels that I have, just to have a nice base layer before I'm going to add the metallic effect. And this layer is applied all over the highlights of the entire angel. And then to enhance the effect that this angel is made of metal that has aged and weathered over a long period of time, I'm going to use a sponge and buff in some of this golden wax all over the areas that I applied this rustic paint job. Next object that I'm going to give a bronze effect is going to be this small candlestick that has a smoky looking glass. And before I do anything else, I'm going to first give this one a textured finish using some of the Mod Podge, and this is going to help with some of the layering process later. And after Mod Podge had dried, I went over with a thick coat of the black chalk paint to have a nice, deep, dark base coat to start with. For this one I did the same layering process where I went over with some of the stippling motion using the graphite chalk paint and then went over with some of the reddish brown chalk paint mixture. And then I did add some of this patina effect using the baby blue mixture that I had made with the white chalk paint and some of the light blue soft pastels. And like with Angel, I added the patina in random spots for more of a realistic look of an aged patinated antique bronze object. Then I used the same rusty mixture that I used before, and this one I'm going to add to all of the highlights of this candlestick using a sponge applicator, and I'm going to focus on making sure that all of these beaded details on this candlestick is going to get enhanced with all of this bronze effect. And once that layer had dried, I buffed in some of the golden wax to enhance more of the look of bronze metal. And the last object that is going to get this bronze effect is this chrome candle holder that I have here. And just like I did with the candlestick, I'm going to give this one a textured surface using some stippling motion with a sponge and some of the Mod Podge. And the difference I do here is that I'm actually going over with a thick layer of the graphite first, because I'm going to add some interesting patterns and textures using some dripping techniques and some stippling motions and some spatters with an old toothbrush just to get more of these interesting variations of tones and textures. So then I went over with a watered down wash of this black chalk paint just to get some of this effect of paint running down the surface of this candle holder. And if the paint wasn't running enough, I just went over with a spray bottle with water and then just sprayed on the surface so the paint would start to run down the entire candle holder. And I did a similar technique with painting on with some of this reddish brown mixture that I had and then sprayed some water on it so it would start running down the surface of the candle holder to get some interesting abstract patterns. Then using an old toothbrush, I'm going to use this patina mixture that I had, the baby blue one, and then I'm just going to do some spattering effects all over the surface of the candle holder, get some nice interesting patterns and details. And I did the same thing using the rusty mixture that I used before. Then with a small sponge applicator, I just used straight up soft pastel in a rusty shade and started to buff it on the surface of the candle holder where I'm going to add the golden wax. And then I just buffed in the golden wax all over the surface of the rusty soft pastels to add this bronze effect. So now I'm gonna start working on the copper effect. So this one is just to show you what bronze looks like. And I have some of this patina. It has this kind of baby blue, sky blue patina to it. But it's not like the kind of patina that is on copper, because copper has more of that kind of sea green or maybe turquoise. It's these shades that I'm talking about. So I'm going to use these and mix them in with this white chalk paint that I have, so I can create my own chalk paint in this kind of mixture. I'm planning to make a deeper tone of that patina on this one, because I want to have that kind of bluish green tint in the low lights, and the highlights are going to be the copper effect for this angel, because this one is going to have what I call the smooth finish. So to get a deeper shade, I'm first going to go over with a base coat of either graphite or the black one, just to deepen the entire surface so I have a nice base coat to start with. And then I'm going to go over with these shades. So I'm just gonna start working on this one now to create a copper effect. So I'm going to do a similar technique on the copper angel like I did with the bronze angel, where I'm going to use a watered down black chalk paint. But this one is actually going to be a 2-layer process, because I want a opaque layer of this black chalk paint for the other shades to show up much better. Then I decided to add more of these blue and green shades into this patina mixture that I had before. There was this baby blue shade, and this time I wanted to be more of that brighter bluish green patina that is very typical for copper sculptures. And this layer is going all over the surface of the angel, and I made sure that the paint mixture was a little bit runny, so it would be easier to distribute it all over the surface of the angels to make sure that the entire angel was covered with this patina. Then I made a new mixture that is going to be the base coat for the actual copper effect. So I tried to make sure that I got a paint mixture that was similar to a warmish toned rose shade that would be a perfect undertone to the metallic effects that I'm going to add later. This one was stippled on using a sponge applicator all over the highlights of the angel, similar to the reference picture that I was working from. And this technique made sure that all of the patina stayed in the low lights. So at first I thought that to get this kind of copper metallic effect, I was going to dip this sponge applicator into the golden wax and then dip it into this rose tinted paint mixture that I had made and mix it in with the golden wax to get more of sort of a coppery tinted metallic effect. And it sort of worked, but still the paint muted down some of the metallics, so I decided to go over with a little bit of straight up golden wax on top of the surface. And at first I thought that this was going to be good enough, so I went over with the finishing wax all over the highlights of the angel. I didn't use any finishing wax on the entire angel because I wanted the patina that was in the low lights to have this powdery, matte, chalky finish. But then after closer inspection and having some time to think about it, I wasn't really that happy with the finished result because it looked more closer to rose gold instead of copper. So I decided to go over the surface once more with straight up golden wax and a thicker coat of golden wax this time, not as little as I used before. And this time I really got that copper patina that I was going for to look more similar to the reference picture that I was working from. So I'm going to start working on the other object now that I want to give this copper patina effect, which is going to be this candle holder. And as you can see with the finished result of the angel, I really love the effect that I got with this one. And it looks more close to that angel that I had as a reference with the color shades of, for example, the patina. But when it comes to the other objects that I want to give this copper patina, I want to make sure that I get more of that orangey tinted copper, and also I want more of that greenish shade to this well, this patina effect, so it looks more like blue-green or turquoise. So I'm gonna try to mix in a little bit more of green and hopefully get more closer to that kind of bluish green patina instead of being too more like blue. So when it comes to the applications of this one, I'm going to do something similar to the bronze effect that I did on this candle holder. So I'm gonna focus on having something that is deeper in tone in the shadows and then some highlights. For this one I'm going to use another picture as a reference where it has this copper effect on it in the background, while the foreground or the highlights has more of this copper patina brushed onto it. See if I can do some kind of brush pattern using these kind of sponge applicators. Otherwise I'm going to use some kind of old bristled brush. So it's going to be a reversed application what I did with the actual angel. And also I might add something to this mixture that it makes it look a little bit more closer to the orangey side, but still having that rose tint, but more warmer, so it looks more like copper instead of turning it to look more like rose gold. Yeah, so that's the plan I have for this one, and I'm gonna see if I can create this copper effect that I'm going for using the reference picture as a guide for all the steps. So for the copper effect on the smaller candlestick, I used this reference picture as a guide that had more of this kind of minty toned turquoise patina on it. And like I did before, I went over with a layer of the black chalk paint, so I had a dark base coat to start with all of this layering process and making all of the other shades pop much better. And the reference picture also had this layering process of some grayish brown tints and then builds up until you get to the copper patina. So I did a similar layering process here as I did with the bronze candlestick that I made earlier, but the difference here is I'm actually going to do the copper effect before I'm going to add the patina. So here I'm going to do a stippling motion all over the highlights and details with this rose tinted paint mixture that I had. I add a little bit more into the mixture to make it more closer to that kind of orangey tinted rose mixture. And once that paint coat had dried, I started buffing a thick coat of the golden wax so I would have a metallic finish on top of the rose tinted paint mixture. And this time I wanted to try out this rose gold nail art powder that I had and wanted to see if it would get more of that copper tint when I had this golden wax as a base underneath this rose gold powder. And I did this when the wax finish was still a little bit tacky or had more of a grip to it, and this really helped because this made the nail art powder buff into the surface of the golden wax and gave more of that warm tone close to copper metallic effect. Looking at the reference picture that I was working from, I could see that it had this kind of chalky, powdery patina underneath some of this scratchy looking patina. So I decided to go over with this phthalo green pan pastel that I had and add it in random spots similar to what I could see in the reference picture. And to make sure that the pan pastel stays in place and doesn't move around when I'm going to apply the other layers of paint, I went over with a coat of the fixative spray just to make sure that the pastel stays in place. Then was finally time to start working on this new mixture of patina that I had made. And this one I used with an old damaged bristle brush to get this kind of brush stroke effect on top of the surface of the copper. And this really enhanced the effect that was in the reference picture. I could also see in the reference picture that it had a layering of different shades of this patina. So what I did is I mixed in a little bit more of the white chalk paint with some of this bluish green patina mix, so I could get a layering effect of brighter and brighter shades of the same color. Now I'm gonna start working on the last piece here, which is the candle holder that is in a silver chrome finish. And this one I have already given you the Mod Podge, so it would have more of a grainy texture. So for this one I want to make something similar to this one. As you can see, this one has more of an abstract look to it with all these driplets and spatters. And then I have some areas that has some of this golden wax to give more of that tint that this is supposed to look like antique bronze. So I'm going to do something similar to this one with that copper patina effect, but I do actually have a picture of copper patina that has similar patterns to this one, but more of those shades that I've used for the other objects that I made looking like copper patina. So it's definitely going to be something like this one. As you can see, it differs. It has a mixture of the turquoise, bluish green, and some of the more bright baby blue shades mixed in with some of this rustic looking copper tints. So I want to make a mixture of those different kind of variations of copper patina to this one, but doing it similar to this one. I think the easiest way for me to do this is if I do something similar to the other candle holder that I made, where I made the copper effect as a base color, and then I'm gonna try and do this kind of texturing with the different variations of blue. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun to play around with different colors and textures and some different patterns to make it look similar to copper patina. I'm going to add a layer of the black chalk paint as a base coat like I did with all the other ones, and this one I applied in a thick coat so it would cover the entire surface and hide any of the chrome that was on the candle holder. Then I did some stippling using the grayish brown chalk paint all over the surface to get some interesting abstract details and patterns. And I did the same technique but using this rosy paint mixture that I had used before when I did the copper effect on the candlestick. And I also applied the golden wax on top of the entire surface of the candle holder using the same stippling technique. Then to lock everything in place and also have sort of a tacky surface for the rose gold powder I'm going to apply it later on top of the surface, I added some of this liquid furniture wax all over the candle holder. And then I waited till the furniture wax was a little bit tacky so I could start buffing some of the nail art powder all over the surface. And to protect all of the nail art powder that I had added, I sprayed a layer of fixative all over the candle holder. Now to create those abstract details that I saw in some of these pictures of some copper patina that had more of these fun, interesting patterns and textures with different variations of copper patina on it, I'm going to first use this greenish blue paint mixture that I have here and use just an old toothbrush to do some stippling and spattering all over the surface of the candle holder. And since I wanted to have variations in tones of patina, I mixed in a little bit more of the blue tint to this mixture. So I had a variation of patina from some shades being more closer to green and others being more closer to turquoise or just shades of blue. So that's the finished result. That's how you make two similar objects look like they are made of completely different materials just by how you apply your paint job. For myself, I have had a little bit of a difficulty to know what's the difference between antique bronze and copper patina, because every time I'm Googling or maybe looking on Pinterest and searching copper patina, often sometimes pictures of objects that are actually antique bronze are coming up in the search results, and that's obviously not right. It's supposed to be, copper patina. So I felt like I wanted to make it easier for myself and actually do some research and now do a paint job for me to see the difference between these two different kind of antique, weathered, aged metals. And the reason why I made this video also is because I'm going to have some other projects where I'm going to give some finishes to objects that I want to look like, for example, antique bronze. This one was a perfect guide and helpful for me to to know the layering effect and what kind of colors and paint job I need to do, so it would be easier for me when I'm going over those steps for other projects. So this one is helpful also to show you that you can add patina to antique bronze, but it's a different shade and a little bit different in the application also, and the other color variations for the aging process of those two different types of metals. For the angel, for example, I made this one more blue toned in the patina and more of a warmish golden tint to the copper, but you can see in some lights that it has this kind of coppery rosy tint to it. But with, for example, this smaller candle holder, I made it more look like the kind of typical look of copper patina that you think of when you see something or a sculpture or something that is made of copper and had aged over time and has this kind of powdery looking sea green, almost turquoise shaded patina to it. But when it comes to this kind of chrome candle holder that I had, I wanted to play around more with that kind of abstract look, especially since I went with a abstract look to the bronze candle holder here, which was also the chrome one. So you can see definitely the difference here between the two different applications. And also I had some color variations to the patina. It wasn't only one shade of patina. Some areas were more blue tone and some were more green tone, and had this copper metal tint underneath it. So that's what I went for when I worked on this one. And also this one shows that you can do a third variant of this kind of copper patina effect. So these ones are pretty similar to the fact that they had this kind of greenish tinted patina to it, and then also they have more of that coppery shade to the copper, since I went over with buffing some of that rose gold nail powder on top of the golden wax that I had added, so it could get more of that kind of copper tint than the angel, because the angel had more of that golden tint, but I was going after a picture that I had as a reference. That's why I went for that finish on the angel. This just shows that you can do different variations when it comes to copper patina. It's not only one way that is the right one. There are multiple different kind of looks to the aged look of copper patina. Same thing goes with the antique bronze. You can add more or less of that kind of golden metal look to it. At first actually I went over with less of that golden wax to, for example, the angel and the smaller candle holder, but I felt like I wanted to have more of that golden metallic look, so it really would represent antique bronze, or at least look like it was antique bronze instead of looking like an old stone sculpture or something. So that's how I went over with a little bit more gold to all of the highlights, so it would have sort of a shimmer or a shine to it in some lights. But I just went over buffing some of the golden wax on top of the surface. That was pretty much it. It wasn't really something complicated or anything. So it all depends on how much metal effect you want on your bronze sculpture or object that you want to add this antique bronze to. If you want it to be less of that metallic effect, then just buff a tiny amount of the golden wax or buffing material that you have in a golden or bronze shade on top of some areas, if you just want a tiny amount to just show that this one is made of metal that has aged and weathered over a long period of time. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I hope you really enjoyed this video and maybe get some ideas for some upcoming projects that you might have for interior design, where you want to have something more closer to aged copper, different variations of tones of the patina to those objects, and maybe if you want to go the route of antique bronze, then I have some different application techniques here also. If you would be seeing a video of me working on an object and I'm doing copper patina or antique bronze effect on that one, and I don't explain how I'm doing it, then I'm going to link to this video either in the comment section or in the description of that video. Yeah, so that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.